Innovation Best Practices episodes, where I try to make sure that every episode is designed to help you sell more and make more. And you can do this using proven and practical best practices that I believe can work for virtually any business and any innovation need. I want to give a special welcome to our listeners around the world in over 80 countries. Welcome back. Today we're going to be having one of the best interviews I've done with Adam Malofsky. He's a PhD with a true expertise in adaptive innovation. It's my interview with him about important insights. So let's get to our interview that I had with Adam, and let's have some fun. It is my great pleasure to welcome a very special guest to the Innovation Best Practices episodes, Adam Malofsky. We're going to be talking about adaptive innovation, and this is something I'm very intrigued about. And in the spirit of innovation best practices, this is going to bring some new thinking and everything to the listeners here. So I'm really eager to get into that. But before we do that, I'd like Adam to kind of introduce himself and tell us a little bit about what he's doing.
Are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
So I guess I'm Adam Malofsky. A lot of times I say I'm my father's son, Bernie Malofsky. Bernie was one of a group of about 5-6 people who took Loctite Corporation, very famous for innovation. Bernie has 5 Harvard Business Review studies on his innovation work alone. But for 27 consecutive years, basically every quarter, they grew that company 15 to 20%. Both in sales and in earnings. So really an unprecedented record, with about 50% of their products over a 5-year period were derived from the last 5 years. Again, something unprecedented. I grew up in that home, carried it through my career, and for the last 10, 15 years have been working with a lot of large but also very small companies, venture capitalists, and really put together, beginning about 20 years ago, but culminating about 7, 8 years ago, this practice we call adaptive innovation. And adaptive innovation is really taking open innovation one step further and a little bit of flipping it on its ear. So open innovation's a lot about really transactional kind of searching. I've got a challenge, I have a problem, let's see who else might have solved it in some other way. The reverse is our customers, we'd love to see all kinds of new ideas. Let's open the doors, let's let them flow in and see if we find something kind of cool or something new. But as I was discussing today, actually with Procter & Gamble, talking collegially about adaptive innovation, we do something a little bit different. What we do is really look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, look at the concept of time, and we say to ourselves, what do we wish we had more of? We wish we had more time, and we wish we had better quality time. And using that simple principle, we then start to look at opportunities a different way. We say to ourselves, what are the big nascent trends that are developing in the world today? And in tangible materials or tangible products made with materials and how they affect services, where we play most of the time, we're looking at manufactured products. And so in manufactured products, people are always trying to find a way to make them faster. They're trying to find ways to use all kinds of new materials. As an example of what adaptive innovation would do, we sit there and say to ourselves, in 2 examples, how can we do something without using energy? How can we develop products without putting energy into them? And we come up with a what must be truths that surround that. What would a product look like in the abstract? And then we're able to start to look for solutions without having a particularly specific challenge, but rather our customers' needs and an overall trend to look for them. And in case in point, Cirrus, a startup we developed, was derived exactly from that type of work. In Cirrus, we were looking for manufacturing technologies that wouldn't use energy, and particularly for assembling and coating products. And as it turned out, some materials technologies were being developed in the medical arena that fit the abstract specifications we had come up with from a chemical standpoint and from a material science standpoint. but without saying a particular chemical structure. And it turned out in the medical arena, we found some materials that were being used for wound closure called methylene malanates that would rapidly cure, and that were benign to the human body. And that started to look like the ultimate clean and green material. They were infinitely variable. What was really interesting is they cured like superglue. They only needed tramp amounts of base that would occur on surfaces, so you have acids and bases. And so he started to realize that, wow, we could coat all kinds of materials with this infinitely variable stuff. We could bond all kinds of materials with infinitely variable stuff. And you say, boy, what does this mean, Adam? It sounds like you're being kind of complicated or convoluted right now. The bottom line was this. When we showed this technology to General Motors, the second largest investor in our company, Cirrus, a venture capital-backed company we have, we were able to show them that they could paint a car with no energy, essentially in less than 2 minutes, which meant that would change the way they coated and painted cars, eliminating 50% of the cost of building an auto plant and operating it. But this holistic approach went much further. Because we could cure materials with essentially no net energy input, what we were then able to do was change the whole way a car could be designed. I could now paint plastic and metal parts with the same material. I could use the same finish that was used in automotive in refinish, something that was never possible before. But further than that, because I didn't use heat, I could change the materials used in designing the car, how it looked, how it functioned, how much it weighed. In fact, we could potentially lightweight a vehicle by another 10%. And we could translating that, we could change the way other materials were assembled. So in the case of cabinetry, we had a situation where we developed a technology very similar, where we can produce cabinets not in 7 to 8 weeks for a large-scale manufacturer, but we can actually do that potentially in as fast as 72 hours. And some of the initial operations that we've begun to revolutionize with that technology using adaptive innovation, we were able to rapidly deploy in 90 days a new technology that took the ganging of panels for cabinet doors from something that took 24 hours to something that took 10 minutes. When you put that into the whole process, that's where you dropped 8 weeks into 72 hours. So I guess that's a little bit of looking at adaptive innovation. The stricter definition that we use is adaptive innovation is iteratively and dynamically adopting scenario-driven resources, tools, and methodologies for persistently gathering knowledge analyzed for developing consumer insights, facilitating abstractly specified innovations, and translating them into actually valued economic inventions that can be sold. By taking this approach, we really literally reduce the cost of the work we do for clients and their ability to do it themselves by upwards of 90 to 95% in almost every case. We built our work off of Peter Senge, Clayton Christensen, and Ari DeGus of the Living Company, and really find ourselves looking at 3 major activities: trying to develop insights based on global observations of all the stuff that happens in our world, coming up with innovative ideas, and then reducing them to practice using existing inventions. So I guess that's a little bit of an introduction.
Well, you've blown my socks off, and that doesn't happen easily. I've been around this business for a couple of days myself, and when I hear being able to paint a car with no energy in 2 minutes, 50% cost reduction, taking cabinets from 7 to 8 weeks to 72 hours, the doors from 24 hours to 10 minutes, and all of that. I mean, that's innovation at its very, very highest level. I want to get into a few aspects of this in just a moment, but I want to kind of underscore for listeners something that Adam has talked about here. I've just recapped some of the time savings that Adam talked about, and in some of the episodes I've talked about over the course of my career in taking a look at the hierarchy of needs that consumers have for everything from coffee to soap to toothpaste and all those sorts of things from my career at Procter and for wine. I was always amazed to see one word in almost all of the top 3 needs, and that was the word convenience. Now, the word convenience means very different things in different categories, and I was really shocked when I saw it in the wine category, but as I learned what it meant, it made a whole lot of sense. But convenience is really about both consumers and people in business wanting to find more efficient and effective ways of getting their needs met, with less hassle and all the rest of the sort of stuff, and what you've in the examples that you've given us here. I mean, these are like superstar sort of examples of what adaptive innovation can do. I want to, if you could, Adam, talk a little bit more about maybe the first 2 steps that I think you mentioned just at the end: insights and then ideas. Talk about how you go about developing some of those insights, especially maybe the insights that got you to this, bonding material and everything else that you got. I mean, boy, that seems to me like first of all, when you said, how are we going to do this without energy? I went, yeah, how are you going to do that without energy? And then you talked about how you can do that. So kind of walk me through maybe if that's an example or another one that you think better illustrates it. Where do the insights come from? What's the process that you use to gather them?
I'll start at the high end, which is what we do when we're looking for potential investments or startups or things to get involved with. We about 15 years ago looked for some big trends. All right. And so we spend quite a bit of time, probably 25% of our time, just watching what's going on in the world, both from a political, cultural standpoint, political, socio-demographic, the changing environment, resources, oil prices, whatever it may be, and trying to get a feel for what is something that will cause a fundamental change in the way the world might operate. As it turned out, a number of years ago, we looked at a few things, including materials and assembly, and we were looking at energy. And as it turned out, we didn't really care about energy. We didn't find it interesting. There was this great big ball of fire in the sky, and it provided lots of energy, and people would have to pay for it whether they liked it or not. And people were always pretty innovative there, and we didn't know much. But materials was something different. People were scared oil would run out. They were worried about how much energy they were using to produce things. And we started to say to ourselves, what must be true? Something Ari DeGusse talks about in his book, The Living Company. What must be true if we were to not want to use energy? And what would need to be true, or what would be enabled if we no longer used heat? And as it turned out, if you could eliminate heat in whatever form and energy, suddenly you could use all kinds of new materials that were less expensive, because they generally, if they were temperature sensitive, they tended to be less expensive. And then we looked at ourselves, how can we make things faster? And we turned out, if I didn't have to take time heating things up in general, when you look at all those processes and you looked at catalyzed processes, boy, there are opportunities to do things faster. So we started to say to ourselves, what do the specifications look like? And looking at that trend, what would have to be true? As it turned out, you'd have to have a catalytic system that was based on catalysts that people wouldn't perceive existed. As it turned out, most surfaces have tramp base on them. All right, so you have acids and bases. It turns out your fingers are pretty basic. The reason you glue yourself together with superglue is because superglue cures the same way as these methylene malanates we discovered. You put stuff on your finger, it sees some base, and the water that's on your surface cures yourself. As it turns out, there's base everywhere. Despite acid rain and everything else, most surfaces, as it turns out, are basic. The detergents, all the things you use. We said, boy, essentially we've created a two-part system, but we're on parts basically already there. And so we started to say to ourselves, boy, we need a material that's highly diverse. Let's look for that. Over a 5-year period of doing all kinds of projects, we suddenly came across the medical program we spoke of and saw that, wow, we had encountered these materials before, but had never looked at them through this lens of eliminating energy and doing things at high speed. And so the people we were doing some work for were really interested in the medical application. We started to look at what it meant in this large-scale opportunity to change the way things are manufactured. And so we were done with that work. After a few months, we started to pursue this opportunity, develop some materials. And we said to ourselves, we developed only about 50 grams of this material. We need to show that there's customer interest. We're big believers in the money you spend should be inversely proportional to the risk you have in the idea or the venture. And so we took our materials and we saw, oh wow, we can glue some glass together like super glue. It bonds instantly, but when we put our glass in boiling water, it doesn't fall apart. That's a cool, simple demo. People will get that. There aren't many materials that could do that. And then we noticed if we put it on surfaces that were basic, like a lot of metals that we had that were caustically treated, we cure that also pretty fast. And so we went to a company that's one of the largest in the world that makes cans for Coca-Cola and all those guys. And they have really long ovens. They wanted to get rid of BPA epoxies and all this stuff. We got 20 minutes with them. As it turned out, it became a 5-hour meeting because when we walked in, we said, we're going to convince you that you should spend some time with us. Give us some of your can stock that we asked you to bring to the meeting. And so they skeptically put it on the table and said, I don't know why you're doing that. We took a dropper and dropped our material, and like a milk splash, it cured mid-splash as we dropped it on the surface.
Wow.
The room went silent. And when the room went silent, they said, what is this stuff? Now realize we then went through literally 4.5 hours of discussions about it. But the real key was we demonstrated to the customer that we could do something powerful that they thought was impossible. And when you verified that need, and we did that with several different customers, including General Motors after our first investment, that's when you know you've got something special. You don't go to them with an end product. You manage those expectations. You develop never-ending, persistent relationships with consistent and regular touch points with your customers, with your stakeholders, to do this scanning and monitoring, that insight first step. When you do that regularly, it means you can show them stuff in its infancy, when it's just an idea, and ask them for some feedback. Do you think I'm crazy? Do you think I'm not? Do you think this has potential? Do you think it doesn't? And that's the ultimate in collaboration. That's a fundamental difference, for example, with traditional open innovation, is getting real feedback from the customer as early as possible. In fact, making them and your suppliers partners all the time, not just when there's a special opportunity. What that allows you to do is, after you get feedback, you may in fact come up with other places or other ideas on how to carry this product to market. But what that does is allow you to come up with these innovations. So insights are, what do people need? Are they interested in this in an abstract sense? The innovative idea, that's starting to make it a bit more specific. It's saying, boy, as an example, in automotive, they would love to coat these cars. In packaging, they would love to coat these cans. But an example of a specification we would come up with abstractly is they won't change their equipment. Or it would be better not to have them use any new equipment, to use the existing equipment so they don't have to have any barrier from a capital standpoint to using this technology. So as we developed it and checked a little further, we said, boy, can we spray this stuff in traditional equipment that they use? And because we had these relationships, they let us try to do those things. They gave us lots of surfaces to try, lots of things to test. And as the company moved forward, as we raised capital, which we did the same basic way, we were able to very rapidly reduce a technology to practice. Now, over a period of 7 years, we're about to have a partner build a plant to make this material and supply it to the globe. We're able to do that in 6-7 years, whereas the 140 years before of effort had failed.
Wow.
And for us, that was exciting. In the chemical industry, most things are 20, 30-year paths to something new. In this case, we had a few products where we not only had deployed the methylene malanates, but interestingly, the wood adhesive I mentioned was actually an award-winning product where we simply modified cyanoacrylates. And that's a fun second story. What was fun with that is we were trying to create an organization that could be able to capably develop and sell these new materials we had discovered, but we didn't have any yet. So we kind of said, let's try open innovation. Let's tell them we've got this cool team, and let's see who comes here to get a problem solved. And one group came to us and said, our super glue doesn't work. The customers aren't happy. They don't like using white glue to put wood together, but our glue's setting up. The big box store threw us out of their stores, and what are we going to do? So we looked at their problem and we said, well, why are you using this stuff? It's brittle and it's meant for metal. Well, customers want it. And he said, are you sure you know what your customers want? Well, they don't like the white glue. I said, do you know what your customers want? So we actually found out that they didn't know what their customers wanted. So we went out, as it turned out, on our own, because they didn't want to do it, to large-scale cabinet manufacturers, little cabinet makers, woodworkers, hobbyists. And we started to ask them, what did they want? Traditional primary market research, but in the abstract. And what they said was, white glue sucks. It's got water in it. Swells the wood. Takes 24 hours to fixture and cure. Every time I glue something together, I have to wait 24 hours. Sometimes I have to use nails. Then I have to putty it. Then I have to sand it. Then I have to shape it. It could take me weeks to put this stuff together. It's not fun. I don't like it. If it's a company, it's really expensive, and that's why it takes 14 weeks to get your frickin' cabinets when you order them. So we heard this, and we said, all right, so what you're saying is you don't like super glue because you can't slide a dovetail together with that because it'll cure before you get it together. But you don't like the water. So you'd like something with no water that magically cures in about 2 or 3 minutes or sometimes 20 minutes, and then after it fixtures and cures, you can sand it and cut it immediately. And they go, yeah, that can't be done. That's impossible. But that would be cool. And so we went back to the labs and we said, hey, guys, what do we think this is? Has anyone ever seen this stuff before? And one of the chemists raises their hand and says, I used to work with your dad at Loctite. This is bad super glue. This is the stuff we'd throw away. And you go, well, what do you mean? Well, everyone wants super glue to be fast because that's what they say it is, super and fast. But the bad glue would take a minute or 2 or 3 to cure. So we threw that away. So he said, do you think you could do that on purpose? And so using existing knowledge of failure, actually, we built a few prototype products, one that cured in a couple of minutes, one in 5, one in 20. And then we brought carpenters into the laboratory from those partners I said we had specific relationships with. So we actually brought in a 6'6" guy, I think, named Jose, who weighed about 250 pounds, muscle bound, and he looked like he might kill people for fun. And he worked with the chemists, and he would judge these things pretty unapologetically, and he'd say, bad, good, bad, good. But we were able to iterate the formulations in real time.
Wow.
And in the end, within 90 days, we had developed a product, all right? And we then showed it to people who did all kinds of woodworking. And we showed it to the cabinet makers. They suddenly said, oh, my God, I mean, we don't have to wait 24 hours. We don't have to sand or do all this other work to it. My God, this will transform what we're doing. But here's where it got interesting. In adaptive innovation, you try to look at things holistically. You try to look at a broader impact, those big trends I spoke about time. Because if you do that, the inventions you probably come up with have a bigger impact than you probably intended. And in fact, this one did. So we actually brought in a guy named David Heim, who used to be at Consumer Reports. I think he might have even been the chief editor for a while of Consumer Reports. And he loved woodworking and bowl turning. And he did work for Fine Home Building. You know, if you're going to retire as an editor, why not be an editor at the best hobby magazine you could go to that you love? So he actually retired from that, and we contacted him, and everyone said he was kind of the Mikey likes it kind of guy. He hates everything, but if he likes something, he'll go nuts over it. So we called him up, and only after we agreed to pay for all his travel and do all these special things did he say, all right, I'm coming out there. Here's some plans. Cut up all these pieces of wood to make a missionary table, make enough for 3 of them, and I'll come out with all my clamps and stuff, and I'll try your glue. It'll probably take me 3 days to put all this stuff together, and we'll see how it does. So he flies out, lands, gets to our place, walks through the door, sees our glue, never used any of his clamps. He must have brought a 100-pound suitcase filled with clamps, only used a rubber mallet, put together the 3 tables in 45 minutes, not 3 days, and pronounced, you have transformed woodworking forever. And not just in the ways we spoke of, but something more exciting. He said, you know, I work with all these magazines, and they always wonder, how can we get more subscribers? No one wants to do woodworking. It takes too long. It's too complicated. You just potentially tripled, quadrupled the number of people that we could call woodworkers because you just made it so much easier to do this. So we brought in some folks from HGTV. They looked at it, and they were kind of wowed at the potential. And someday they were like, wow, so we could actually do a show where we could put something together and actually do it in 20 minutes for real. That was exciting. And you know, the next thing we do is we go talk to people about woodworking, selling materials, and they go, you know, we can actually double, triple, quadruple the number of woodworkers to buy our products, to grow our business. That doesn't happen very often.
Exactly.
And so that's what was fun. And so you can go onto YouTube and you can go look up Nexabond, that's the brand name of the product, and you'll find all kinds of people doing videos showing things they could do they never did before. And this culminated at a few wood shows where he brought David Heim. And when David Heim would do his complicated wood bowls made from little different pieces of wood components that were all assembled into rings and then stacked and then turned and cut, normally for him that was a 2 or 3 week process. He had to do pairs of pieces, then pairs of those. He finally had rings, then he'd stack the rings, and with white glue, you know, he had to wait a long time for it to cure. He was able to assemble all the components with us in literally about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then turn the bowl in 5. So at the wood shows, we brought him as our rock star, where he was turning wood bowls every 20 minutes, 15 minutes. And he didn't have like lots of screaming young girls at a rock star or vice versa, you know, a lady rock star with guys. These are all kind of paunchy woodworker guys who are chanting and screaming, go, 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 at David Heim, who's like a 65-year-old guy turning wood tables. And I'm standing there with my colleagues going, boy, this is a really interesting way to confirm our innovation interest. And we had literally dozens and dozens of big companies and hundreds of small ones approaching us. And we did some focus panel group. And this is where you get into what do you really want to serve the customer? So we had a guy look at our glue who had been using it a while. And we said, what do you see when you see this glue? And he said, I see a boat. We said, what? Why did you say? So you know, you have the earpieces and you talk to the guy asking the questions. And we asked him to clarify. And he said, let me tell you something. With the same guys and the same equipment and all the same stuff I have, I usually have a big backlog. I'm able to triple my revenue and my profits have gone up by a factor of 5. He said, I'm going to make another $400,000 or $500,000 this year using your stuff. I'm telling my wife I'm only making another 200, and she's really pleased with that. I'm taking the other 300 and buying a boat. To me, this bottle of beer is a boat. And so you talked earlier, Richard, about perception, right?
Yeah.
That really crystallized for us what we were trying to do, because to him it was better quality time. He could do more faster, but it translated to his personal life that he could go buy this boat. And I hope those two stories are kind of illustrative of how we think and what we do. And it's really, we're having discussions with a lot of larger companies about, boy, guys, open innovation's one thing, and I think it's awesome and wonderful and does good things. It's time for the next thing. All right.
Yeah.
And we think we see a way to do that. And it's a culmination really of my father's work in the early 70s all the way to today.
Absolutely fascinating story. There's so many dimensions of this. And I've got a couple of points I want to make here, but I want, while your presentation is fresh in people's minds, this is about the 108th podcast episode that I've done, and I think my listeners will understand why the title of this particular episode has in uppercase the words "must listen," and it's the only the second time in 108 episodes that I put that tag onto an episode. So hopefully you understand very clearly how that's a very easy decision to make. There's a whole bunch of points to be made here, and I just want to make a couple here, and I just urge people to listen and re-listen to this episode, and there's tons of nuggets here that can, I think, help an awful lot of people focus on the process that Adam has shared with you here. Yes, it's chemicals and materials and maybe kinds of innovations that are not exactly the ones you're interested in, but if you take a look at how he went about developing insights and ideas, working with customers, experimentation and all that sort of stuff, and running up against things like the person who said that's bad super glue. Well, remember the last time there was bad glue that turned into a superstar product? It was called the glue on Post-its. That was a quote a failed glue. So there's just so many tremendous insights, Adam, in what you've shared with us here. So I'm deeply, deeply appreciative of that. And after we end this call, just want to chat some additional opportunities that that you may have, and interest that you may have in sharing other things with my listeners who are in over 80 countries around the world right now. So, Adam, this has been a hoot. It's right up there. This confirms why I do these free podcasts to share best practices, because this is right at the top of the list in terms of best practices. And I think you're right. I mean, I've been around and through and with open innovation for a long time in a number of different ways. I think it has some things that it can contribute. As my listeners know, when it comes to the creative process, I'm very big in terms of including diversity in the creative process in a number of different ways. And the diversity can come in a wide array of faces and processes and all that, and you've certainly done that here. So an awful lot to be said. Adam, I greatly, greatly appreciate your time, and maybe we can look forward to a time when you can return.
No, I would enjoy that, and we've applied it to things like even banking and food. So,
oh wow!
And we're doing some stuff in education right now as well. So it's just fun to do this. So my partner in crime, Steve Levin, who does a lot of this with me, he started a number of software companies using the approach, and when we met, he hates this analogy. It was like the peanut butter cup, the chocolate and the peanut butter. And we came together and saw we're doing things the same way. He hates that story. You probably could interview him just about that, and he'll just, I wish Adam would shut up.
Well, good. Again, thank you very much for your time, and look forward to having you back here. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, that was a lot of fun, and if you want more innovation best practices, you can get them by going to my website at i2ge, that's the letter I, number 2, ge.com. On the left-hand side on the menu bar, click on DIY Innovation Training. A whole bunch of training programs will pop up there. If there isn't one there that matches your needs, just send me an email. I'll be glad to design one for you. Here's what I'm trying to do with these innovation programs. I want to make you innovation self-sufficient. And that's what these training programs are designed to do, so that you won't have to hire expensive consultants like me and others to do it for you. This can be a major cost savings while dramatically improving the effectiveness and efficiency of your innovation systems. I also have a book, one of my 6 books, and it's titled Proven Practical Innovation That Delivers Results. That kind of says it all. If it isn't proven, it isn't practical, and doesn't deliver results, I'm not too interested. It's available only at Amazon in paperback and as a Kindle book, and it's priced below my break-even cost, so it's a great, great value. I love hearing from listeners. If you have suggestions, comments, or requests, just send me an email to richard@i2ge.com. I look forward to hearing from you. In the next episode, it's going to rather intriguing. It's got an intriguing title, but it's also got some deep truths in it. And it's about 5 counterintuitive truths about innovation. I think you're going to want to listen to this. So please make sure that you tune in. As always, you know I'm deeply appreciative of you taking time out of your busy day to spend it with me. I look forward to reconnecting with you soon, and until then, please have a great day.